Shalom, dear Chavarim. My name is Devorah Kalik, and I'm with Bless Israel Network, and I'm coming to you today from our home in Israel on top of Mount Carmel. I wanted to welcome you to this week's A Taste of Torah, where we share little tidbits, interesting things that we hope you'll find interesting. We believe you will. And where we always do want to try to find the Messiah, the Mashiach in the Torah portion. Well, this week's Torah portion begins in Exodus or Shemot, the book of Shemot, starting in chapter 10, verse 1, and goes all the way to chapter 13, verse 16. What I want to do today is start with something that is a little bit confusing. And people commonly say that the Egyptian exile lasted 400 years, and this is why. 400 or 430 years, this is why. In Genesis chapter 15, verse 13, it says, and God is speaking, Hashem is speaking, and he said to Avram, "Know with certainty that your offspring shall be aliens in a land not their own, and they will serve them, and they will oppress them 400 years. But then, in this week's Torah portion, in Shemot or Exodus chapter 12, verses 40 and 41, it says this: "The habitation of the children of Israel during which they dwelled in Egypt was 430 years. It was at the end of 430 years, and it was on that very day that all the legions of Hashem left the land of Egypt." So, which was it? 400 years or 430 years that they were in exile in Egypt? Well, I'm going to say something that's going to shock you. It's neither. They were actually in Egypt only 210 years, and I'll explain how this is so. Our sages, the Chazal, we say, if we look very carefully at the prophecy, the first one that I mentioned in Bereshit or in the book of Genesis, chapter 15, it says this: "Your offspring will be aliens in a land not their own." This is a huge clue that the prophecy is not only speaking of the actual years that they were physically in Egypt, but because they were in a land not their own, this is all exile. They were aliens and strangers in a land that was not yet theirs. So, the entire time from when the prophecy was given, when Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob were still strangers in the land of Canaan, not yet their own, and then they went into Egypt, so the total time that they were in Egypt was 210 years, but the total time that they were in exile in Canaan and not in, it wasn't their land, it was belonged to the Canaanites, this is where we get the 400 or 430 years. Now we have to talk about the difference between why does one place say 400 years and the other place say 430. If we take the time of the prophecy that was given to Abraham as year zero, just not actually, it was not actually year zero, but for our purposes, let's say that's year zero. This happened, this prophecy was made during the, what's called the covenant of the parts, when the Abrahamic covenant was born. So year zero is when the prophecy in Genesis 15. Then you add 30 years until Isaac's birth. So that's where the discrepancy, why in one place it says 400 years, because in Genesis, God was counting from the time that Isaac would be born. And in the book of Exodus, he was counting from the time the prophecy was given in Genesis 15. I hope that's clear. So to put this all together, if you put down on a piece of paper, put the year zero, add 30 years for the time to Isaac's birth. Then add another 60 years until Jacob's birth. Then add 130 years because Jacob was 130 years old when he went into Egypt. So 30 plus 60 plus 130 equals 220. Subtract 220 from the 430 years mentioned in Exodus 12, verses 40 and 41, and you get 210 years that Bnei Israel, the children of Israel, were in the land of Egypt. And they actually were not in slavery that entire 210 years. If you remember, they didn't go into slavery until after Joseph died, sometime after, and the new Pharaoh came into existence, and he did not know Joseph. So, but anyway, that's how we fix the discrepancy between the exile in Egypt. So it's actually proper to say they were in slavery in Egypt 210 years, well, not even that, but it was something between 210 years and it was actually less than that. And what the scriptures actually say. So I hope that makes sense. Now, I want to switch to talk about the execution of the plagues. In plagues number 1 through 9, Moses and Aaron were acting as God's or Hashem's agents, and everything was executed by God through them. However, the 10th plague, the death of the firstborn, was different. And I want to read to you what Hashem says in Exodus chapter 11, verse 4. It says, so said Hashem, at about midnight I shall go out in the midst of Egypt. Every firstborn in the land of Egypt shall die. Then again in Exodus 12:12, it says, Hashem is speaking, and he says, I shall go through the land of Egypt on this night, and I shall strike every firstborn in the land of Egypt, from man to beast, and against all the gods of Egypt I shall mete out punishment. I will give out punishment. I am Hashem. Then, if we look at Exodus 12:23, Hashem again is speaking, and he says, Hashem will pass through the land of Egypt to smite Egypt, and he will see the blood that would go, they were told earlier to put the blood on the lintel and the doorposts. He will see the blood, and Hashem, the Lord, Adonai, will pass over, and he will not permit the destroyer to enter your houses to smite. Who is the destroyer? If Hashem said he himself is going to do this, that he wasn't going to use an agent, he wasn't going to send anybody else, and the sages, the Chazal, say this, Hashem carried out this plague, executed this plague himself. Who is the destroyer? Well, in Hebrew, the word is ha-mashchit. It is the ha-mashchit who is the destroyer who killed the firstborn, but it's Hashem himself. So this is a little bit confusing. Well, he points out, Rabbi Shapira points out, when I was listening to him, I think it was several weeks ago, that right in the middle, so let me tell you how Hamashchit is spelled. It's spelled Hey, our H sound, Hey, Mem, Shin, Chet, Yud, Taf. Right in the middle, Mem, Shin, Chet is Mashach, like Mashiach. So this destroyer, Rabbi Shapira says, is actually Mashiach. Now this might upset some of our theology just a little bit, because how could our Mashiach, and by the way, this also somehow, Mashiach and Hashem, they are saying, Hashem is saying they're connected, they're echad. So we need to understand something very important. Our Mashiach, our Messiah, is not just a meek little lamb anymore. That was the first time he came. He is now the warrior in this Torah portion, and this is a shadow of the future, because Egypt represents all the enemies of Israel, the nations that do not join with Israel, do not become grafted into Israel through the Messiah, Yeshua. And so this points us to a warrior king, a warrior Messiah who is going to destroy Israel's enemies. This also points to Isaiah 63, when it says, "Who is it that is coming from Edom, and his garments are stained with blood?" They're red, they're stained with blood. He is coming from Edom, which is code for Rome and, I believe, Ishmael. So we're talking Islam and Christianity. Now, I'm not talking about true Christians here who love Yeshua, who are living a holy, godly life, and who love Israel. I'm talking about the majority of Christianity, the system that hates Israel, hates the Jewish people, is anti-Semitic, and believes in replacement theology. So that's what I'm talking about when I say Christianity. So next time, when this in Isaiah 63, this is speaking about the time of the end, when Yeshua comes to destroy Edom, Christianity, and I also believe there's evidence that it's also Islam. Now, it's very important that in Christianity we get the idea that he is no longer, or he won't be in the next coming, a meek little gentle lamb. He is a warrior king, the Lion of Judah, who will with his breath slay the enemies of Israel and our enemies as well. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this week's A Taste of Torah, and I hope you'll share this, and we're going to post it on our Facebook page and our YouTube pages. I hope that you will share this on your Facebook pages, and if you have a YouTube channel, we ask you to do that as well, just to get these important teachings out to our brothers all over the world. And I want to also say, if you are enjoying these teachings, we ask you to please consider supporting us. These do take resources and time to put these things together, to record them and then edit them the little bit that we do. And so you can go to our website, www.blessisraelnetwork.com, and you can click on the donate button, and there you will be able to make a tax-deductible donation that will help us to keep doing these teachings, and especially in the production of our very important program, Revelation to the Nations, where we highlight the Israeli body of Messiah and the work that they're doing to build the kingdom, and give you an opportunity to support them as well. Well, that's it. I want to wish you all Shabbat Shalom from Israel, and read this week's Torah portion, all of it. There's so much there. And ask God to illumine your eyes. And I highly recommend I've said this before, but I highly recommend you get a Hebrew-English version of the Bible. This is the Art Scroll publication, Stone's Chumash for 5, the 5 books of Moses, and then there's commentary, and one side is Hebrew and one side is English. And as you are able, start learning some of the Hebrew, because there's so much richness, as you can see, in the Hebrew itself. And I'm very, very grateful for those, my teachers who are teaching me, like Rabbi Itzhak Shapira and Rabbi Stephen Bernstein, and also Rabbi Ezekiel Italki. So God bless you from Israel. Shalom, shalom, velitraot.